So last year, we did, at this time last year, like this leadership gathering, we gathered the whole weekend team, we brought in first impressions as well. And we kind of did a vision casting, if you will, of what we wanted to do in kind of trying to continue to build off of what we had already put in place. And I shared the Proverbs 24, verses 3 through 4, where it says, wise people are builders. They build families, businesses, communities, and through intelligence and insight, their enterprises are established and endure. Because of their skilled leadership, the hearts of people are filled with treasures of wisdom and their pillars of spiritual wealth. So we talked about specifically how we wanted to onboard people, how we wanted to train and develop people, and how we wanted to equip and empower and release leaders. And we've been making efforts of that this past year, of onboarding people. That's still a work in progress. We've kind of just continued to talk as a team of how we onboard people. And it's hard. Like some areas it's easier to onboard people. Production, it's a little bit easier to onboard people. Because you gotta have a little skill set to come in production.
You can work a smartphone.
Right, like which you gotta have some skill set, because like we don't want to assume everyone knows how to work a smartphone. Some people still use flip phones, so it's okay. But I was speaking of my dad. My dad, he finally upgraded this past January to an iPhone, and he's very, like, it's an emotional thing for him to no longer have a flip phone. So he prefers a flip phone. But anyway, like, it's a little bit easier than band and vocals. Like, you have to have some skill set in bringing people in, right? And so we've gotten the ensemble going, and Lydia's been leading that. She's not able to be here tonight, but been doing a great job with that. So we're still going to continue to flesh some of it out. Training and developing current people was one of them, and we've been making efforts of like how we can practically train people without. Training people is different than teaching people, and I kind of hit on that. But I know Joe had set up some master classes for people over the summer. We have a vocal one coming up this Thursday, and then you did the EG one, or you're going to?
23rd.
Yeah, the 23rd, you're doing the EG one. We had Nelms and Bob do a drum and bass one, which was super well attended. We'll have a vocal one. We had a keys one as well that Joe and Lawson did. And so trying to like build space in to really train people. We've been doing the worship coaching on Zoom, which is always a lot of fun. That's a lot more like head knowledge, heart knowledge, than it is like practical skills with that. Part of me just has realized that a lot of training and developing of people is like hands-on. It's in the moment that we do it. It's in our weekend gatherings that we do it. It's at youth that we do it. It's at young adults that we do it. I mean, like practically, Anna led this past weekend, and she had a speaking moment of just setting up a passage. And as we're watching back, so we'll watch back Saturday nights, and as we're watching back Saturday night, we start giving Anna some pointers of like, okay, try this in your language of setting this moment up, right? So that's like a training moment. And so some of the training is hands-on. Lindsay's been able to do this with media, bringing media in when we've had rehearsals and being able to train them. They were there the other night without her running around, I don't know, playing some game. Did you ever get all those pictures? And
No.
was there a winner? No? No one shared them? It was pure chaos. I just know Madeline like split from the room, and she's like, all right, I gotta go to the lobby. And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And then how we equip, empower, and release leaders. And specifically, we thought we would start with not like our strongest team. Not that there's a strong team and a weak team. I shouldn't have said that way. That was a poor way of saying that, guys. I apologize. We started with a team that I thought there really needs to be some help in caring for people. So we had started with our vocalist, specifically our female vocalist. Since it's all guys on staff as worship leaders, there is just somewhat of a, how do we care for all of these women that we have on our team that God's like gifted and put something in? How do we help steward that? And so he had asked Christy and Hannah and Brooke to kind of take point on helping create a span of care. So we're empowering them and releasing them in that way. and then Christy, of course, is moving. And since then, we've had Anna step in and Lydia step in as well, and just kind of help lead that side out. And so we're going to keep growing that side of it, of asking people to be team leads in that way. So, personally, guys, I always think we should be further than where we're at. Like, that's just how I think. I always think, man, I thought we'd be further on 3.5 years into me being here, and we're not. And then I look back and I watch some of our recordings because I would always share them on Facebook, and I'm just like, flip, we've come such a long way. This is incredible, right? And sometimes, like, I don't know if you guys are this way, you always think, like, we should be doing more, we should have more people, we should be better in this way, right? And then, I mean, like, I commented on it to Joe earlier, like, Phil, and I don't know if it's because he got the Gretsch, and it is just like a touch of God on his life. I hear his tone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And a simple thing of going from mono to stereo on EGs, no one hears this stuff, by the way, and I get it. They just know, like, something's different, right? And like, Phil and Nathaniel and their tones on the electric are just like on point. I mean, Layton's is always great. He doesn't. Hold on. I'm just being offensive as can be tonight. But he's not editing this part.
He's on staff.
But yeah, he is on. This is what we pay him to do. We pay him to be great. No, like, you don't always. Here's what I'm getting at. When you're on staff and you're leading, like, there's a level of expectation that you bring, as in, I know how to do this. Like, whether we like the language or not, like, we're paid to do certain things. Those of us on staff, we're paid to be good at this, right? And so I'm not trying to say that in an offensive way, but, like, Layton has time to grow in a craft where Phil is working a full-time job and has to do it as a volunteer, right? And so there's, like, we have space built into our schedules where we get to sit and develop things that volunteers don't always get to sit and develop. That's what I mean by that, right? And so when we have people like playing at a level that I'm just like, I don't know when Phil has time to work on this. I legitimately don't, because I know from Lynn, he has a pretty full schedule, right? And I don't always know when people have time to work on it. When people step in and vocally they're just on point. When people, you know, Lynn, like, he listens through the songs, and I don't think he does it just on Sunday mornings. Like, from conversations that we've had, like, you listen through the songs throughout the week, and I'm just like, okay, like, that is what we want for everyone. And in that regards, it's where I'm like, okay, we've come so far in 3.5 years. Like, the bar has been raised, the standard has been raised, and it hasn't been raised because people on staff have suddenly said, here's the new level that people need to strive for. It's that pursuit of just saying, hey, we just want to bring our absolute best to God, right? And so I'm just sharing that to say, like, we've come so much further, and I don't know if you guys ever go back and watch, but from our production to our entire team, to the freedom on our team, to the way that people play together, it is so encouraging to see. And I hope you, like, realize that and get that and just kind of keep it in your head. Part of our job in leading, though, is to understand what our roles are outside of just what we're doing in that moment, right? As in, if Mackenzie only thinks of her role as a leader in just playing keys, then we haven't done our part in the leadership community, right? Like, Carrie only thinks of her role as, okay, I'm on W2 at TC this coming weekend, that's my own job. As leaders, we're so much more than that. So the conversation that we're about to have has to do with how we're structured as a team. This is one of my least favorite conversations to have, mainly because I find it quite dull. But we're going to make this as interactive as possible, guys, okay? Leadership structure is not my strong suit when it comes to conversations. So, I'm going to state just a couple things and then we're going to dive in a little bit further with some questions. So the statement being, we can only build based on the strength of a structure that already exists. Okay, so when you see skyscrapers, which we don't have any in Newton, but we do have some little tall buildings, right? Crossroads is one of those. If you fly out of the, we got the luxury of flying out of Peachtree City Airport, and you see two buildings, once you're in the air and you turn towards Newton, Crossroads, and Piedmont Hospital, right? Which is fascinating to see, right? The height of Crossroads, the building, is determined by how deep we went structurally, right? And so this idea of we need to understand what our leadership base really is and what we're asking of people and how we're really leading and what that looks like, right? So we're going to break this up in a second of looking at two specific sides of leadership within our team. But leadership, as we know, leadership is always about serving other people. It's always about adding value to other people. Great leaders is what they do. They're very sacrificial in that way. They don't make it about themselves. They willingly give things away to other people, try to invest in other people, and make other people great, right? So we just celebrated, like downstairs, Kilgore being here 30 years. And like, when you think of the impact that Ken has had, we're not even going to talk about his entire life. How many worship leaders have come through that you've invested in?
A bunch.
A bunch. Right. That's someone that's saying, I'm going to add value to other people's life, regardless of what they get back to me. Right. I'm just going to give to them and watch them go and do something with their life. Right. And I remember the first time I met Kilgore was at Refuel, and him just like sitting there and sharing. He said, I used to be on staff here as a worship person. He said, but a few years back, which I didn't know how many it was a few years back, but he said a few years back, I wanted to transition and be in a role where I could support and encourage the next generation of worship people, right? And that heart posture is a heart posture that we always need to have in every position of leadership. So leadership serves other people. Leadership, it sets parameters. And that's a healthy thing. Sometimes we view like parameters as an unhealthy thing, but parameters are a healthy thing, because if there wasn't a definition of how far we could go or how wide we could go with something, it would just end up being pure chaos, right? So if you think in the nuance of like a song, if there wasn't a structure as in a time signature in a key, the basic things, like those are basic elements of a song structure. A time signature and a key, when you look at staff music, is the first thing that you see. If there wasn't that at all, that meant whatever note was drawn on there, everyone could interpret a different way, right? To an extent. But C is no longer just C. Someone can say, I mean, there's nothing there. I might choose to play a C sharp, and I'm just going to write a sharp, right? So does that make sense? Like leaders set parameters in that way. Leaders give direction. Which is sometimes difficult to do, of letting people know, like, here's where we're going in this moment. Leaders set atmosphere, and that's something that we've talked about before, of how everything that we do is about like creating an atmosphere where people can encounter God and connect with Christ in the church. Like we're trying to set a tone of helping people step in and begin to pour their hearts out to God. And then probably like one of my favorite things with leadership is leaders, they're pioneers for the future, right? Like, a true leader is never content with the present. There is what I would say is a holy dissatisfaction within them, right? And so they're constantly looking at, where's God leading us? Where's God taking us? How do we step into the next thing? That is not reserved, by the way. That's not reserved for people that have the title of pastor or people that serve on staff at a church. It's not. Like, I believe very much what the New Testament teaches, which is the priesthood of believers and the gifting of the local church. And that's something that I think God's been teaching me of like, allow the giftings of other people. And those that work closely with me would know that this is hard for me, not allowing other people to step in their gifting, but keeping my mouth shut while they step into their gifting. Okay? And they're laughing because they know it. But leaders, they have a sight for what could be, and they set their mind on it, and they set their heart on it, and they're planted in the present while leading people towards the future, okay? It's leaders that just stay planted in the present end up finding themselves in the past at some point. Leaders that run ahead into the future end up going places where no one's with them. So great leaders are people who stay planted in the present while leading into the future. So with that, someone just let me know, how do we define a leader within Crossroads Church? What would we say a leader is within Crossroads Church? Joe's laughing. You want to answer, Joe?
I mean, I want to answer.
You want to answer? Do you want me to just call on people?
Yeah, you should probably do that.
You want me to call on people? No, Lindsay doesn't want me to call on
Stress.
high stressor.
315.
Yeah.
Impact four.
In the definition of Crossroads.
Okay, a 315 leader. So we define a leader within Crossroads as saying a 315. I would say that's not actually quite how we define a leader. I would say that's what type of leader we want. We want a 315 leader. But
Do you mean like what, like a leader has gone through impact and they've gone through, like, or what do you mean?
so those are the qualifications.
Are we talking like ministry teams, small groups?
How do we define?
I'd say a person who has positive impact on others
Okay.
to support the mission of the
Right,
church.
right. So how do
It
we
sounds like
define a
Ethan
leader?
is lying.
within Positive impact. There's a specific word that we use for positive impact. Anyone know it? It's in 315. It's probably been a while since we've all gone through 315. What is it? Influence. Right. So a leader is someone with influence driving the mission of the church, right? So they have influence. What's influence? It's the ability to sway people, okay? So I have a lot of influence over Ashley. You don't have the same type of influence over her. You might, but I doubt it. I can sway her in a specific direction. It means I have like leadership in her life that God's given me because I'm her husband. She also has leadership in my life that God's given her because she's my wife, and she can sway me one way or another, right? And so if you can influence people as in sway people in that way, specifically if you can sway people towards the mission of a church, right? That's the definition of a leader. So back to what Joe said, what type of leader do we want? Now you can answer, Joe.
A 315 leader.
315 leader. All right. What are the characteristics of a 315 leader?
Right, Howard?
Right heart,
Right knowledge.
right knowledge, right understanding.
To get the.
Beautiful. All right. You guys catch all of those rights? Did you catch it? Mackenzie? You want to repeat it?
The right knowledge, the right heart, the right understanding. Yeah, I didn't hear the last one.
Right results. This is good. This is going super well, guys. I love it. All right. So we know what a leader is. We know the type of leader that we want. What are the qualifications for leadership? There's a reason I'm asking all of these questions.
Like in Crossroads?
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about Crossroads. Qualifications. What are the qualifications of a leader, guys? Baptism.
Church membership.
Membership.
Being a small group.
Small group.
Believer.
To go through.
Go through the impact.
Baptism of believer's baptism. Not just the baptism of believer's baptism. Membership.
Start from the beginning.
All right.
Ways to go through.
Impact. Okay. All right. Now, here's my question though. Is it enough for a leader to just go through impact?
No.
Okay. So specifically then, when we're asking what are the qualifications of a leader, what are we looking for? Right heart, right knowledge, all of that. And it's unpacked in there. This is like, all of us should know this. Correct. All right. And we get this in staff all the time. Now I know why Ken feels this way every time I ask this question. How do we define that? How do we define it? Fully trained.
The 7 M's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Character and
Nice.
conduct. Okay. You guys with me? All right.
Yeah.
I wanna get a copy of the notes.
I'm trying to make this like group I'm trying to make this group oriented and bring everyone in instead of just standing up here saying stuff,
Can we
right?
do multiple choice in the next
Multiple
question?
Yeah, Lynn and I, Lynn will put together a PowerPoint for the next
That'd be
multiple
great.
choice. So, that'd be
We
helpful.
can do
All right.
The thing.
Yeah.
The quiz thing.
I
And
love
you did
the
in
thing.
school. Couldn't.
No idea what you're
We'll talk after.
All right. So, a leader defined by Crossroads is someone with influence, influencing people towards the mission of our church, which is to be and build disciples. The type of leader that we want is a 315 leader. The qualifications for that leader is everything that we stated, which is membership, baptism, well, baptism's supposed to come first, but baptism, if you haven't had it, anyway, membership, small group,
Small group also comes with membership.
small group comes before membership. You're in impact, and what impact's purpose in teaching you is foundations that then lead you to live out the character and the conduct of Jesus, right? So every single one of us as leaders should be carrying that. That's not we're not exempt from that because we're worship, okay? Our team should have that heart and have that DNA. So, what I want to unpack though is what is leadership on our team? Right? Because we have names of people on our team. We have worship leaders, we have worship leader 1, we have worship leader 2, we have music director, we have team leads, we have production director, we have front of house, we have lighting operator, do we have lighting directors? Designers, right? I'm throwing out a bunch of names for everyone that no one knew. We have video directors, right? We have pro operators. So we have all of these positions. And sometimes what I think I have found, and this is probably on me for not leading us through this sooner, but we're going to work through this next year and try to help all of us understand what it means to lead within our team, not just fill a role within our team. And so what is leadership within our team? I think there's specifically 2 categories of leadership within our team, okay? And this is why this is such a boring conversation, I think, because it's really simple and yet it's super nuanced all at the same time. There's team leadership, and because we lead gatherings, there's gathering leadership. So there's 2 leaderships, right? And we don't always know how to separate those 2. So team leadership is way more of the pastoral side. It's what takes place throughout the week, right? How we care for people, how we reach out, how we plan sets, how we build into people, how we train people, right? So team leadership is way more of what I do, Joe does, Layton does, Dustin does, Adam does, Jared does, Kathy does, Lynn does. We're trying to facilitate towards the leadership of a gathering that's about to take place. But what we're also trying to do is build out more team leadership within our teams. Because one of the, I think, it's slowly becoming a conviction, which means it's going to become a deep conviction as I mull this over more. It's that passage where it talks about that pastors are called to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And so this slow conviction that's percolating in me is this conviction of, I think I want to start giving more away, but I don't always know how. Because I'm afraid of burning people out, and I'm afraid they're going to think, well, that's your job, right? And so I'm trying to carefully lead us towards that, because I don't want it to turn into chaos. I don't think it will turn into chaos. I don't think you guys are chaotic. But I want there to be some congruency in what we do, but I also want to help lead in that way. So, team leadership. I'm going to see if I can structure this the best that I can, so everyone knows what we're talking about. So, there's me. Unfortunately, at the top, you're stuck with it for a little bit, and then under that, there's.
I heard that too.
Oh, I don't know why I said that. Don't disregard that. I'm not going anywhere. Why does stuff like that come out of my mouth? Go on with me. So, I'm seeing if I get this right. So from a staff standpoint, I'm going to pull down production pastor in a second. There's me, and I get to lead all of this. First impressions, we're just going to save that conversation for later. There's me, and then there's Dustin as the production pastor, so this is talking team leadership within us. Next gen worship leader, which is Leighton. I know we all know this. There's a worship leader. Here's what gets somewhat confusing about this. There's two people that I don't know if people know what they do. Lynn and Callie, right? Like, they're on our team. We'll talk about what falls under Dustin in a second. So Kathy's our first impressions director. She's also our service director, okay? She also just helps with so much more than people realize. There's Lynn, if you look on our website, it's called Content Manager, which is humorous, because I think people think she manages the content of our church, as in everything that we print. It's not true. She only manages like the screen content that we put up. She makes sure that all of it's right. But Lynn also helps onboard everyone on our team. She makes sure Joe, myself, Leighton, Dustin are all doing our jobs. Okay? So, it's Lynn. By the way, I don't know if anyone does this. Lynn is considered a volunteer staff person. You're the only volunteer staff person we have, right? Right now, Lynn is the only volunteer staff person that we have.
Lynn has the hardest job.
So Lynn has one of the hardest jobs, okay? So I'm sharing this just to say, when it comes to our team structure, and things are being communicated, and you're like, why is this person communicating with me? I don't understand why they're communicating with me. Why isn't this person, etc.? Or why is Joe saying, here's who the worship leader is? We'll talk about all of that in a second. Some of it is because I have gotten overwhelmed in certain things, and so other people have just picked up for me. So Lynn primarily makes sure things are properly communicated within our team, that people know what's going on, right? It doesn't mean she has all the answers, because usually I have the answers. It just means she's communicating something, because she also just took on, even though I was resistant to it for a while, not because it was Lynn, but I just didn't want her to get burnt out. She just kind of took on being my assistant at some point as well, right? And so we have this team structure, and then under production pastor, quick touch on something. Under Dustin, all of production falls. We've had Adam on staff full-time. Adam, how long have you been on staff full-time?
Almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years. Kilgore's been on staff 30 years. Kilgore is part-time. And then Jared has been on staff 2 years, part-time. Adam is stepping down into a part-time role, stepping sideways into a part-time role. Just edit out everything, just put bleepers on everything that I say. Adam is stepping into a part-time role, Jared's stepping into a full-time, okay? So, under production pastor, we have
TC production director, which is going to be Jared.
TC, okay,
Project manager, which is Adam.
okay. All right,
And then we have Kilgore as a production associate.
okay.
Does all sorts of stuff.
What's the abbreviation for associate?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
I gotta ask because I don't think that's right. I think that's right. All right.
Sorry guys, something happened in the recording's
My
not
board
there.
doesn't want to be bigger or it needs to be flipped. Okay. So not only is Jared production, TC production, he's next gen as well. Okay. All right. So I know this is like so riveting. You guys are like, I came to Breakout for this.
I'm really not sure.
Super helpful. Okay, so this is our like team management as in staff. Here's where this starts getting somewhat interesting, okay? Because Joe's a worship leader. And I have him scheduling all things band, okay? And he primarily leads at TC. Layton is our next gen worship leader, so he covers all next gen world. As in, he's leading in high school, he's making sure stuff is done in middle school, okay? And he does all the scheduling for that, all the onboarding for that. You have me, and I know everyone's still like, what do you do, Jasper? Nothing, I just make sure everyone else does stuff, guys. So then you have me, and I schedule all vocals. So WLs and front line. So Joe's doing all of the scheduling for band across our campuses, only on the weekends. I'm doing our worship leader front line on the weekends, okay? And then Layton is covering next gen. And then Dustin does production for 16, TC does the one here at TC, and then Jared is doing that. Now within next gen, here's where this gets super fun, you have YA. But this part of next gen does not fall under Layton, it falls under Joe, okay? This is why this is super, like, this is where our team is like, I'm trying to help us understand this because this is where it's easier for me to hold on to leadership than try and give it away. Because I'm like, this is not enjoyable to try to explain this. Under worship leaders and frontline vocals, then we have, these people fall under me, but Joe and Layton are both part of it. We have our worship team leads. Now, I know I need it everywhere. Our worship team leads. These are the people that's Hannah, that's Brooke, that's Anna, that's Lydia currently. Specifically, Anna and Lydia are helping care for the next gen side. Because we have young females and we have a staff who's Layton. And Layton's amazing at what he does. But what we need to be aware of is one, we need to protect Layton, allow Layton to pour into young men, and then provide space for these teenage girls that are coming up within our team to be invested in and poured into. So Anna and Lydia are helping with that. So we have these team leads. This is not a staff position, by the way. This is all volunteer. Here's what's fascinating. People think, like people have made comments to me, they think that our worship leaders are all on staff. And I'm not talking about me, Joe, and Layton. They think our female worship leaders are on staff at our church. They have no idea that it's volunteer. They have no idea that our team is run by volunteers. Right? And so this side of it, my primary responsibility right now is giving a lot of vision and direction to this, but a lot of my thought lately has been, how do I help develop this side of it? Because if I can help develop this side of it, I can release things to other people to begin to pour into others, right? So, is this clear so far? Is this helpful for everyone? Okay. So, we start getting into this area of team leads. Within team leads, there's some other parts that we're going to start developing this next year. And this is where our conversation has been as a staff team, primarily when it comes to Phil, when it comes to Mike. We're not just sitting there talking about just you guys, but we're like, they're leaders on our team. Bob is a leader on our team. There's some other guys in their 30s that want to step up and start leading within our team. We need to do the same thing with our band that we're doing with our worship leaders, which is to ask you guys to start creating a span of care that we would help create within our team where you're helping care for other band people, right? Does that make sense? And so that side of it, we're going to build that out on the band side this next year. And then Dustin is working on building that out on the production side. So we've done it with the video.
Yeah, so we have video directors. Lynn's going to be stepping into pro team lead over at Sharpsburg. We're looking at bringing on a TC team lead, a next gen team lead.
Right.
Yeah, we got several kind of ideas.
Right. So if our 2 points of leadership are team leadership and gathering leadership, this is in part why this conversation matters. Because we all need to know that there is such nuance in this, right? Like it's not just straightforward as in, You have a worship leader, and they're the point person, and they're the only person that knows what's going on, okay? And so we're going to try and build this out with production. Lynn, being a pro team lead, means that Lynn is going to start investing in other people that are running pro and helping care for it in that way. What Dustin's tried to do from a video standpoint is have a video director and the same camera operator serving together, so there starts being a camaraderie in that moment, right? So instead of them serving with different people all the time, I know our band and vocals serve with different people all the time, it's just how schedules are. Dustin's able to build that out just a little bit different when it comes to our video operators in that way, right? And we'll end up having that with audio as well. We'll have like an audio point person that's helping care for everyone on our audio team. So, did I cover all of this? Did I miss anything? Yeah? Did I get it? Okay. Is this like 75% clear for people? Okay. I would tell you what our job descriptions are, but they're always changing. I'm erasing this now. You got it. Okay. So we have all of that taking place. Now, all of that is for the purpose of, we're trying to help people become fully trained disciples. Our team exists within our church, and we have a specific purpose. Anyone know what our mission statement is as a team?
Create compelling environments where people can encounter God,
Experience the living God. Connect with Christ.
connect
Yeah,
with Christ.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we exist to create welcoming, compelling environments where people encounter God and connect with Christ in His church. Our team does that. In the process of doing that, we're trying to help become fully trained disciples. And we're all leaders in this. So we have that team leadership side, that pastoral side that's taking place throughout the week. And this is where this gets so interesting. Gathering leadership. Okay? Now gathering leadership, because I changed the term, it hasn't fully caught on. It's caught on to our team. We're working on it, guys. I believe in having gatherings, not services. Services are a product that you offer. Gatherings is the ecclesia of the church, okay? So I just like the language gathering. I'm going to keep championing it and hope one day everyone in our church just starts saying, this is a gathering, because it's what it is, okay? All right, gathering leadership. Gathering leadership is what takes place on the weekend, what takes place at YA, it's what takes place at Next Gen World, it's what takes place at our conferences that we host. And there's a bunch of positions. Who wants to take a stab at all the positions that we have that it takes to put on a gathering? Anyone?
You don't have enough whiteboard.
I don't have enough whiteboard. I'm going to have to flip this and just hold it up on the wall to do this.
It's something like 35 positions or
Yeah,
something.
there's a lot. There's a lot. Okay. I just want to hear, I'm just going to walk down the line, and I just want an answer from everyone. What?
Get started.
No, I want to hear it. I want to hear what you guys say. Okay. All right. Rachel, who is the point person at a gathering? Who's like the point person? Ken Adams.
Senior pastor.
Okay. The point person. That is the point leadership person at a gathering. Yep. Do you want me to make it easier? Weekend. Let's talk weekend. Who's the point person? Ken Adams. Mike. Just give an answer. You better rub one. Miss Kathy. Ken. Campus pastor.
Oh, that's good.
Depends on what point of the
You still have
service. and what
Yeah.
aspect of the service.
Okay. Depends on what point of the service and what aspect of the service. Depends. Depends.
Service director.
Service director. Service director.
Overall. See, all depends on how you count.
Correct.
Overall, it's Ken.
Correct.
Yeah, overall, Ken.
It's Ken.
We're talking worship production, service director.
Service director.
It depends.
It's Ben's.
Yeah, Kathy.
Kathy.
What campus?
What campus? Good question. Service director.
Teaching pastor.
Teaching pastor.
Service director.
Service director. Service director. All right. Isn't this so fascinating? There's different answers, right? This is where, I would say last year, I wanted, what? Watch it out. Wasn't invited to this conversation. Anyway.
The correct answer is Jesus.
But, no, I'm sharing this to say, like, I do want to bring some clarity to this, because it's really confusing. Here's what's confusing. If Ken's the point person, what happens if Ken's not there? Who's the point person? The teaching pastor. All right, let's go with this. When Jesse taught 3 weeks ago, who made the call
For him to
about
teach.
everything that happened?
Ken, probably. Or I don't know, is there an executive pastor that's in charge of it all? Mike? No, that's not him. No, we don't have that guy. I don't know.
Right?
Who made that call? Are you not gonna tell us?
I mean, Kim made the call. to
Kim made the
Jesse's
call.
He
speech.
made the call to have Jesse speak.
He asked
But,
Jesse,
so if the answer is the teaching pastor,
so, okay.
and Jesse's up there, it was only Jesse's second time up there. When it came to the gathering, as in when the countdown started and service was dismissed, was Jesse in charge of what took place?
No.
Okay,
That's service director.
That's,
That's service director. all right. This is where
Gathering director.
the gathering.
Good job.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my absolute best.
Change that to a little.
I'm gonna do my absolute best in trying to bring some clarity to what happens and what takes place, okay? Anna has gotten a glimpse into this with helping plan women's conference, right? It was your first year doing it, okay? When it comes to gathering and gathering leadership, who is in charge?
SD.
The pastor that calls for it to happen, that's who's in charge. Ultimately, the pastor that calls for that gathering to happen. The reason I'm saying that, and I should probably change that language because we don't have women pastor, so we should say leader/pastor. I'm trying to bring clarity to this, as in when we do conferences, who's in charge, okay? It is ultimately the leader or pastor that calls for that gathering to happen.
So for all women's conference, so you're talking like Robbie, Lizzie.
Correct.
Okay.
Which was what Anna had to learn to default to.
Yes.
Who has the final say? I don't. The service director doesn't. Kathy and I experienced this past weekend. I wanted one thing to happen at the end of the service. And Ken said, I don't think that's a good idea. Here's what I want to happen. I said, okay. Can you change your language and how you set this up? So specifically it was, we intentionally didn't want words on the screens because we wanted to sing Weary Traveler over people and just them receive the words, right? And just rest in that moment, okay? Ken wanted to do an altar response. And I said, it feels weird every time that we stand people and we don't have words on the screen. They just stand there and they stare at you. Like they don't know what to do unless they know the song, which some people knew because they listened to J93. But like, for everyone else, they didn't. And so I said, can you shape your language then to give people a context of what's happening? Because it's going to be awkward. Now, I completely understood what Ken was saying, which was, I want to eliminate as many barriers as possible for people to come forward and have a moment of praying. Like, 100%. I get that. This isn't as straightforward as just stand people and then say, and then our team's going to leave, right? So there was a conversation that took place. I didn't make the call, Kathy didn't make the call, Ken made the call, okay? Now, here's a question I want to ask them. Who makes the call on the worship sets that are playing?
You do.
Okay. WL1, set planning. It is done by worship leader 1. Why do we have a worship leader 1 with plan sets? Anyone know? Any of our worship leaders know?
took that class, I'm just trying to remember what you said. But when you say they plan the sets, like they're picking the songs, they're setting it all. But how does that work out if there's a worship leader one over at 16 and there's a worship leader one here, but it's the same songs?
Not always.
It's
Not
not
always. Not always.
All right, Joe, bring some clarity to this. Who plans our sets?
So generally, the way I approach it is I let Jasper plan. Let's say he's worship leader 1 at 16. I let him plan his set first, and then I look at the set that he's picked, and I figure out whether or not what the moments that he's shaped are going to translate over to the TC crowd that we lead. Sometimes I'll change out a song. Sometimes I'll change who's leading a song. Sometimes I'll change a key, depending on the team I have. But I'll default to try to make that set work at TC, so that way it's at least kind of congruent. But sometimes it doesn't work, so we have to swap out a
I
song.
got you.
Okay.
But generally, I let the worship leader 1 at Sharpsburg make the initial set.
Like initiated.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, so worship leaders plan sets. So the overwhelming majority was either Ken Adams or service director is in charge. So far, we've established that Ken Adams is in charge, or whoever the lead person or pastor is. And we haven't even touched on service directors yet, because Kathy, how much weigh-in do you have for our sets that we plan? None. Okay, so at this point, service directors haven't even entered into the game of what takes place in the gathering leadership. If there's not a set planned for that gathering, whose fault is it? Worship. Okay, all right, now here's what we're trying to do with our team leads and bringing in W-2s. What we're trying to do is bridge that conversation to where it's not just us guys on staff planning sets. This is an area of empowering and releasing and inviting people into the conversation. So this past week, I'm just using it as an example, but Anna was WL2, and I sent you 2 different sets. Then I sent you one, and then I think 5 minutes later I corrected myself and said, never mind, I don't want to do that. Here's what I want to do. What are your thoughts? And then we had a conversation about it, and there was a specific song that Anna wanted to bring in. I can't remember what it was. But, oh, yeah, it was Waymaker. And she asked about Waymaker. Well, we've never done Waymaker on the weekend. We just introduced Lean Back. We were talking about introducing Same God next weekend, and I felt like it was too much. Now, it was a great idea. It was just I don't think this is the right time for it, right?
And
But-
that's that parameters piece, like we're saying.
Right, that comes back to leaders set parameters, right? And so as worship leaders that are WL1s, whether we're on staff or not, what we're trying to do is WL1s invite WL2s into the conversation. So the set is not solely set just by one person. Because this is like what it said, what I'm trying to grow in is understanding that God's given the body gifts and collectively. And if all we hear is from one person's voice and one person's perspective, we're missing out on the beauty of the body that God's created us to be and expressing that. Okay. So the worship set gets put in, and then we step into rehearsal. Who runs rehearsals? Service director.
Music director.
Music director.
The rehearsal side, MD.
MD.
Like run through, which is like the final part where you hit the whole service, service director.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's still on the service director to make sure rehearsal's going timely and smoothly.
Yeah, there's definitely back and forth, but the music director's actually like
The one
like
actually
saying,
running
hey,
it.
make sure you hit these parts, make sure you're hitting these transitions.
Correct.
The MD is leading, the MD is leading the people on
The
stage.
band.
The band.
So the service director is leading everybody.
The room.
Because it's more than just the band during
And
rehearsal.
they have-
Let's talk about this practically, guys. Who runs our rehearsals?
W1.
Well, yeah, the rehearsal, yes.
Why does the W1 run the rehearsal?
They plan the set, they know the flow, they
All right.
report on.
They
Okay.
cast the vision. They
Right.
gotta
Correct. Now, this is currently how it is. It's not how we want it to stay. Okay? And I'm trying to make that clear. One of the reasons WL1s run rehearsals is because I'm primarily WL1 and I have great control issues. So okay? This is part of acknowledging, like, how do we really, what does structured for growth look like within our team? What does it look like for all of us to be using our giftings? Not to do things just because this is the way that Jasper does it. So what I've found, and it's fine, like this is just an acknowledgement of like it can be a strength and a weakness, and lately it's been trying to acknowledge a weakness in it. Where I see leadership voids, I will step in. It's just this like bent and wiring within me. So where I see leadership voids, I step in, okay? So when I see rehearsals that I'm not even leading, this is where I'm trying to keep my mouth shut more. When I see rehearsals that I'm not even leading, not going well, and people not making decisions, I'm like, make a decision. Someone. We have a service director, we have a music director, we have a WO1, and we have a WO2, and we can't get a decision made. Someone make a decision. And the problem is people have relied on me making the decisions.
Well, or maybe they don't know they have the authority to. I don't know who these people are you're talking about, but,
All of us.
okay.
I'm just saying. Because, and this is coming from conversations that we as staff people have said, where I've been gently corrected. In a very loving way. And I receive it. I receive the correction that I have a tendency of overstepping. The problem that is taking place is that there's a lack of clarity about what we actually want to do for the sake of growth. So worship leaders plan sets. Worship leader 1, they bring a worship leader 2, okay? And they plan the sets. Here's what we want to take place. We want a music director on stage to be communicating with a service director and or a production person, because Kathy can't always service direct, communicating with the production person, making sure both of them working in tandem that rehearsals are run effectively. And then this is where this gets really nuanced, guys. And this is why this is hard for us to always understand, and why we default to the strongest leader in the room being the person that makes the calls. The worship leaders are the ones that plan the set, and they have a vision and direction of what needs to take place. If they don't bring a music director into the conversation, the music director is only going to do what is written down to do. Okay? And so this is where we got to grow, and we got to learn how to do this. So, rehearsals, ultimately, we want run by SDs and MDs. That's what we want. Think of our young worship leaders that we have coming up in Next Gen. They're not going to know how to run a rehearsal. And we're doing them a disservice to expect them to know how to run a rehearsal. So what's the best thing that we can do? Have people that are best equipped and capable of leading rehearsals making the calls. And they're letting, here's what I found, like within some of our worship leaders, they get really bogged down on the nuances of how notes sound. And they become very unaware of the clock on the back wall, and this thing has to move along. Like, we gotta get this moving. Music director, SD's purpose is to keep people on point, on track, moving in the same direction. Now this SD is also communicating with the entire production side. And this is where, as band and vocals, and we split this fairly evenly, except for these two guys. Band and vocals, these two. This is where sometimes we forget that there's an entire other side of our gathering that needs to take place. We forget that there's videos that have to be run. We forget that there's cues that have to be set. We forget all of that, right? So, when the gathering starts, and that countdown ends, at that moment, who's the person that is responsible for making sure it gets from where it starts to when the communicator gets up?
Worship level 1.
Correct. It's no longer the service director. This is why this is like, you guys, this is why I wanted to have this conversation and try and bring some clarity to this. When I'm up there leading, when Joe's up there leading, when Lindsay's up there leading tonight, what you guys didn't hear, and I know like everyone, is used to in-ears, you didn't hear Joe saying at the end of King of Kings, do you want to do another verse? And my cue of saying yes was let's sing that again, okay? Now I don't know if Lindsay wanted to sing another verse, but as a worship leader, one, do you feel like we needed to? You go anyway with it, don't you? As a WL1, what I felt in that moment was people are here and they're ready to sing this out again. And we need to give space for their voices to be lifted in this moment, okay? So when it comes to that moment, it's no longer Kathy making the call, and it's no longer Joe as the MD making the call. Now Joe prompted the ability for that call to be easily made. But Joe did not say, Jasper, sing another chorus.
But it's not as clean as that, right? Because I've been up there before and had like Kathy in my ear, like, hey, talk a little longer, or hey,
Well,
I need
there
you to
was a
stall, or,
There's
yeah.
an issue.
But they're still like,
Right.
different.
yeah,
So-
I guess.
In the moment,
In the moment,
it's the worship leader. But
Okay.
the service director is making sure everything as a whole is still going.
It's still
So
happening.
they're still making sure Ken is ready to go at the right time.
Right.
So if he's not ready to go, he's gonna. the
They-
service
they gotta
director's
pull
gonna
us
start.
out.
The crow was crashing.
Right. Okay.
so there is moments, but Kathy's job as a service director, or when Dustin sits in the service director's seat, is to make sure that it moves forward. Our job as worship leaders is to lead it. The music director's job is to make sure everyone is on the same page and in line with what those worship leaders are going in that moment. Right? So does that make sense? This is why this is like, it was, I can't remember when we as a staff talked about this, but it came up of what you're bringing up, the lack of clarity, of not everyone knowing who's making these calls, who's doing this, how does this happen, how does this get done?
Yeah, because like in the moment, almost every weekend, like this weekend for example, hey, I know we've got 5 minutes left on this countdown. We're following Jasper here. We're seeing what's going on. And so I've got the whole production side, everyone ready to go. You know, we're following whatever the worship leader's kind of doing here. So we're waiting to see what his call is at that point.
I guess that's true, because you're not gonna just like
Pro-
cut off his mic when the timer ends.
Right.
Or, yeah.
We're ready to move
Right.
forward. We're ready to either move forward or we're ready to follow the worship leader
Right.
at that point.
That checks out. I get that. Yeah.
I know it's boring.
No.
All right. This is just the beginning of what we're trying to flesh out with this. Because what we want to understand, and this is where this has become like really apparent, is when it came to women's conference, we're talking about, I'm not calling that.
It was very confusing.
Right, it was. But it was confusing because you have staff people and you have not staff people. So Kathy's on staff. Is she in charge or are you in charge? Dustin's on staff. Is he in charge or is Christy in charge? Or is Lizzie in charge? Like, who's ultimately over these things? Who's responsible for them? Who makes sure all of these things happen? And that's why I wanted to point out, ultimately, the leader and pastor that makes the call that the gathering is happening. Who makes the call that our weekends are happening? Ken. That's why it's not the teaching pastor. Because Jesse doesn't have the authority to step in and suddenly say, no, here's who I want as a worship leader, here's the worship sets that I want, here's how I want this flow to go. Yeah, and he can bring suggestions as the pastor that's like teaching, but he ultimately doesn't have a say over the gathering of that worship. The same as worship leaders are planning sets. So at what point do SDs and MDs begin to lead when we step in and we start rehearsing? Because their job is to keep things moving, to make sure everyone's on the same page with this, right? So, and then it comes to the leading of the gathering, and it defaults to the WL1. And this is where not everyone sees these conversations taking place. There has been an encouragement of giving moments. So, to use this past weekend as an example, Anna texted me and she said, hey, do I have room to read a passage this week? And I said, yeah, we have plenty of time for you to do that. So Anna knew, I have this moment, I'm responsible for this moment, and I'm leading this moment. And in that moment, the leadership of the gathering, ultimately, it was still on me, but I handed it off, if you will, to someone else to take the responsibility in that way. right? And then we had Nathaniel in our ears, just making sure we're all on track and we're keeping on track. So am I missing anything with this between us? Am I covering all of it? Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think if I hit it. So this is what we want to apply to every single gathering that we have. We want it to be in Next Gen. We want it to be in YA. We don't have service directors in Next Gen and YA right now. We do have MDs in YA. I can't remember if we do it Next Gen yet.
No, yeah.
This is where we want to build towards that, right? And this is how, as a team, we want to release other people to start leading in these ways. And the conviction for me has been, what happens if we have staff people just aren't here anymore? We're not going anywhere. I shouldn't have said anything earlier because I'm like, as far as I know, we're not going anywhere. We always question if Layton's getting a job somewhere else, but you know.
What?
But we're not. But I also want it to be where we're not missed if we're gone, right? Like if we've done our job well, we've equipped people to step in, we've equipped you to lead, we've equipped others on our team to know how this actually works, to where everyone's stepping in and they're on the same page. They know who to go to, they know who's in charge, they know who's making calls, they know how to get that stuff done, right?
So take this past YA as an example. I asked Madeline if she would be willing to be the WL1 for this.
Yeah.
So she was the WL1 for the gathering. I sat down with her, I helped give her some direction on, hey, here are the parameters we're working with, here are the song sets that we have, to make sure we're not just throwing in random songs. And I said, hey, I'm willing to lead a song if you want me to lead a song. If you want to lead the whole set, you can lead the whole set. I'll do whatever. So like, I sat down with her and I helped her make sure she felt equipped to make those calls. And then on like the 26th, when Anna's leading over at TC as WL1, like we're trying to give as much information and as much empowerment as possible for you to make calls that you need to the gathering that you're leading, to the point where I'm going to be out of town. So I'm not going to be able to lead Jasper's teaching and Layton's at 16. So we have to make sure that Anna feels confident and empowered enough to be able to lead that gathering as WL1.
But ultimately, people that are stepping into TC are going to go, well, where's staff people at? And they're going to look for the first staff person to be the point person that's leading, which is not how we want to lead our gatherings, right? We don't want it to rely on a few people. We want all of us to be able to step in and know how to do this and know our role and know our part and fit into that. And that's why so when it comes to this is where, like, when I'm not WL1, I've intentionally been scheduling myself lately for not being a WL1 for that purpose of trying to help other people, like, see that this isn't about a person. Not that anyone's made it about me. I'm just saying the culture and the nature of how we do things has made it about specific people. And I don't think that's how the church of Christ is meant to operate, as in, he said he's gifted us, not some. He's given everyone gifts, and so he's given everyone on our team these gifts. Let's see people use it, not let's see some people use it. But within that, in order to know how to use a gift well, there has to be leadership. And that's why there's that difference between team leadership within our team and gathering leadership, right? So ultimately, when it comes to team leadership, even if a WL1 is planning a set, and I'm like, that is not a song that we sing, and here's why we don't sing that song, that's me stepping in as a worship pastor, okay? That's not me stepping in and trying to say, here's how I think you should better craft a set. It's me stepping in and saying, this is not a song that we have put our stamp on and saying, here's a song that we're going to sing within our church, right? And so that's my pastoral role coming out. But for the most part, I want us to operate more as, here's how we want it to be. Leader, pastor makes a call of what happens in that moment. The worship leader plans the set, the rehearsals are run by SDs and MDs, and when the gathering happens and the countdown stops, and that swell-in happens, that WL1 is responsible for taking us through the worship set and handing it off to the next moment, right? And it's this dance, and it's this nuance, and it's us working together. That's why healthy relationships within our team matter so much. Trust within our team matters so much. Like giving the benefit of the doubt to people, believing the best about people matters so much. Guarding our hearts matters so much, that we're people that desire to serve the people of God, not build our own platforms and build our own egos, right? That's why all of that matters. And then as leaders, you guys get to help bring clarity to this. So, with that, any questions? This is the most inspirational leadership breakout. Okay, anything you want to add, Dustin?
I would just say that, you know, the WL1 is designed what that gathering kind of looks like, that planning, and you pass that information along to the SD and MD. And that's why they're running the rehearsal. They know the vision behind it. They know what the idea behind it all is and driving that forward. And so, you know, if there's something comes up on the production side, the band side, you just go to those SDs or MDs rather than necessarily the WL1.
Yeah.
And then they can have, then the three of them can have those kind of conversations of if there's something that needs to shift or change,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Joe?
Solid.
Lynn?
Okay.
Okay. Wayne? Jim? Adam? Joel? These are my senior ones. So, thanks again for being here, guys. We didn't record this, so if you missed stuff, you can, we'll post it, you can watch it, and sleep well tonight as you watch it. Let me pray for us, and then you're free to go. God, I thank you for tonight. Thank you for this team of leaders that are here, and I pray for those that were not able to be with us tonight. God, thank you for just bringing this team together. Thank you for just helping us grow, giving us so much like grace and faith to grow in the past 3.5 years. And I just pray as we just continue to step into all that you have for us, that we just keep our eyes and hearts fixed on you, that we remember, Jesus, what this is about, is just lifting your name up and glorifying you and just growing in our relationship and our understanding of you. I thank you just for the leadership that's represented in this room, the gifting that is in this room. And I know you just have so much in store for us. So help us to seek you and put you first. In your name, Jesus. Awesome. Thanks for being here, guys. Fun night.